Growing up in our small suburban town in Ohio, my older brother Ethan was everything I wanted to be. He was 3 years older than me, tall and athletic, with the kind of smile that made people instantly trust him. Teachers adored him, neighbors always mentioned how polite he was, and even strangers seemed to gravitate toward his charm. For me, he wasn't just my brother, he was my hero, the one person who made me believe that maybe, just maybe, our family really was as picture perfect as it looked from the outside. Our parents worked hard. Mom was a nurse, constantly pulling long shifts, while Dad managed a local hardware store, always tired but never failing to bring home some kind of story to make us laugh. Ethan seemed to carry the weight of their expectations with ease. He was the star basketball player at his high school, the kind of guy who could balance sports, grades, and popularity without ever appearing stressed. And me? I was the quiet one, always in Ethan's shadow, but I didn't mind. I actually liked it that way. He was the leader. I was the follower. He showed me which video games were worth playing, which music was cool, how to ride a bike, and even how to talk to people without sounding awkward. He was the one who helped me with math homework when Mom was too exhausted and Dad was too busy. If Ethan said something was good, I believed it. If Ethan told me something was safe, I trusted it. To me, he could do no wrong. I still remember one specific summer evening when I was about 11 and Ethan was 14. We were in the backyard, the air sticky with the smell of grilled hot dogs and fresh cut grass. The neighborhood kids had all gathered for a makeshift basketball game on our cracked driveway court. I was terrible at it. I could barely dribble without losing the ball. But Ethan kept passing it to me, cheering me on, making sure I felt included even when the other kids groaned at my mistakes. When I finally managed to sink a shot, by pure luck, Ethan lifted me onto his shoulders, shouting, "That's my little brother." Everyone clapped, even if they didn't mean it, and I felt like I mattered. That was Ethan. He always made me feel like I mattered. But looking back now, I realized something unsettling. Heroes aren't always who we think they are. Sometimes they're just really good at wearing masks. The first cracks in Ethan's armor appeared when he was a junior in high school. At the time, I didn't recognize them for what they were. To me, he was still invincible. But in hindsight, the signs were there. The nights he came home late with bloodshot eyes, the excuses about study sessions that didn't quite add up, the way his moods shifted from explosive anger to guilty apologies in a matter of minutes. I was only 13 then, still too young and naive to understand. I thought maybe he was just stressed from basketball or overwhelmed by the pressure of college applications. Our parents were proud of him, but also demanding. Dad expected him to take over the family's legacy of hard work, while Mom wanted him to aim higher, to be the first in our family to attend a big university. Ethan carried both dreams on his shoulders, and I figured the weight was just getting heavy. But one night changed everything, or at least, it planted the seed of suspicion that would later grow into something I couldn't ignore. It was a Friday evening in late October. I had been in my room, sketching in my notebook, when I heard a noise in the hallway. Our parents had gone to bed early after a long week, but Ethan's bedroom door creaked open. Curious, I followed the sound, my bare feet quiet against the carpet. I caught a glimpse of him slipping out the front door, his hoodie pulled up, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. At first, I thought he was sneaking out to meet a girl, something normal, something teenage boys did in movies. But when I peeked through the window, I saw him pacing at the end of our driveway, glancing nervously up and down the street. A car pulled up, a black sedan I didn't recognize. Ethan walked over quickly, exchanged a few words with the driver, and then money changed hands. He stuffed something into his pocket and hurried back inside. I ducked away from the window before he noticed me watching, my heart pounding. I didn't understand what I had just seen, but I knew it wasn't good. The way he moved, the way he avoided looking around too much, it all screamed secret. When he came back inside, I scrambled into my room and pretended to be asleep. A few minutes later, his footsteps paused outside my door, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he knew. But then his door shut, and the house fell silent again. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he had bought something harmless. Maybe it was just a video game or some dumb gadget. But a part of me, deep down, felt a chill. My brother, the person I admired most, was hiding something. Over the next few months, I started noticing little things. Money disappearing from mom's purse. Dad muttering about missing cash from the register at work. Ethan's grades slipping, his energy on the basketball court dimming. He brushed it all off with easy excuses, and our parents wanted so badly to believe him that they did. But I couldn't shake what I had seen that night. And that was the beginning of the unraveling. The moment I realized that sometimes the people you put on pedestals are standing on shaky ground. Back then, though, I still clung to hope. I still believed Ethan would straighten out, that maybe he was just going through a rough patch. After all, he was my brother, my hero, my protector. What I didn't know was that his secret would grow darker, more dangerous, and eventually force me into a choice that would tear our family apart forever. By the time Ethan was a senior in high school, the cracks in his perfect image were impossible for me to ignore. At first, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe I had let that one night of him sneaking out with the mysterious car haunt me more than it should have. But as months turned into years, the strange behavior grew harder to explain away. Ethan had always been the golden boy, the one who never seemed to falter. But now, his teachers started calling home about missed assignments. Coach threatened to bench him after he skipped practice twice in 1 week. Mom tried to laugh it off, saying he was just burned out from senior year, while Dad muttered that he was probably just being lazy. But I saw the truth up close. I saw the nights when Ethan's hands trembled as he dug through drawers, looking for spare cash. I saw the way he locked his bedroom door now, when before he never cared if I barged in to play video games. I saw how he grew thinner, his once bright eyes dimming with a shadow I couldn't name. And most of all, I saw the lies. "Where were you last night?" I'd ask casually. "Library," he'd answer too quickly, avoiding my eyes. "What's in your backpack?" "Homework." "Don't touch it." "You okay?" "You look sick." "I'm fine. Just tired." The lies stacked up like bricks, and I carried them quietly, unsure of what to do. There was one night that still sticks with me more than any other. It was a cold winter evening, snow falling heavy outside, the kind of night where our little house felt cozy and warm. Mom had made chili for dinner, and we sat around the table as usual. But Ethan barely touched his food. He kept glancing at his phone, his leg bouncing under the table. Dad noticed. "Something wrong with the chili, son?" he asked, his tone light but with an edge underneath. Ethan forced a smile. "No, it's good. I'm just not that hungry." But I could see the sweat on his forehead despite the chill in the room. He excused himself early, retreating to his bedroom. Later that night, long after Mom and Dad had gone to bed, I heard movement again. This time, I didn't just watch from the shadows. I followed. I found Ethan in the garage, crouched by Dad's old toolbox. He was digging through it, tossing aside wrenches and screws until he found what he wanted: an envelope. Dad always kept some emergency cash hidden there, just in case. I'd seen him use it for gas money before. My breath caught in my throat as Ethan pulled the bills out, shoving them quickly into his pocket. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice trembling. He spun around so fast that the wrench he had dropped clattered loudly against the concrete floor. His eyes went wide when he saw me standing there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the old refrigerator in the garage. "Go back to bed," he said finally, his voice low, almost a growl. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Nothing. That's Dad's money." His jaw clenched. I said go back to bed. I should have told Dad right then. I should have shouted until the whole house woke up. But instead, I froze. Ethan wasn't just my brother. He was my protector, my friend, the person I admired most. Seeing him like that, stealing from our own father, felt like watching a glass statue shatter in slow motion. "I won't say anything," I whispered, my chest tight. For a moment, his expression softened. He stepped closer, resting a hand on my shoulder. Good, he murmured. You're my little brother. You've got my back, right? I nodded, even though my stomach churned with guilt. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed the scene over and over, the look in his eyes, the cash in his hands, the way he had turned into someone I barely recognized. I wanted to believe it was just a one-time thing, a mistake he'd never repeat. But deep down, I knew better. And sure enough, the thefts continued. Small amounts of money disappearing here and there. Mom shrugging it off as forgetfulness. Dad blaming himself for miscounting. Only I knew the truth, and it gnawed at me every day. Then came the night that tore down the last of my denial. It was spring, just before Ethan's graduation. I was in my room when I heard him on the phone, his voice low and urgent. Curiosity and fear pushed me to crack my door open. Yeah, I've got it, he whispered. Just meet me at the park. Same spot as last time. My heart raced. The park was only a few blocks away. I slipped on my sneakers and followed him into the night, keeping my distance so he wouldn't notice me. The streets were quiet, lit only by the yellow glow of street lamps. At the park, I hid behind the playground slide and watched. The same black sedan from that night years earlier pulled up. Ethan walked over, his hands shoved in his hoodie pocket. He pulled out the cash, Dad's cash, and handed it to the driver. In return, the driver gave him a small plastic bag. Even from where I was hiding, I could see what was inside. Pills. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just some dumb secret. It wasn't a game. Ethan wasn't sneaking out to see friends or buy harmless junk. My brother, my hero, was hooked on something dangerous. I stumbled back, my hand clamped over my mouth to keep from gasping aloud. Tears burned my eyes as I realized the truth. Ethan was addicted, and I was the only one who knew. I walked home in a daze, every step heavier than the last. How could I face him now? How could I sit at the same dinner table, knowing what he was doing? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, 1,000 thoughts crashing through my head. Should I tell Mom and Dad? Should I confront Ethan? Or should I stay quiet, hoping he would find his way out on his own? It was the first time I understood what it meant to feel completely trapped. No matter what I did, someone would get hurt. And the worst part was knowing that the person who once made me feel safe was the very person tearing our family apart from the inside. I wanted to believe he could change. I wanted to believe he could be my hero again. But as the days passed, and the lies grew bigger, I began to realize something heartbreaking. Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who can destroy you the fastest. And Ethan was on the path to doing exactly that. Secrets are like heavy stones. At first, you think you can carry them without anyone noticing, but over time, the weight grows heavier and heavier until it crushes you. That's what it felt like carrying Ethan's secret. Every day, the stone pressed harder against my chest, and every smile I forced in front of Mom and Dad felt faker than the last. I thought keeping quiet would protect my brother. I thought silence was loyalty. But in reality, it was like watching a fire spread through our house and pretending the smoke was just steam from the kitchen. I was suffocating, and I knew sooner or later, the truth would burst out whether I wanted it to or not. By the time Ethan graduated high school, he had mastered the art of pretending. He stood tall in his cap and gown, flashing that easy grin as Mom cried and Dad clapped him on the back with pride. No one noticed the dark circles under his eyes or the way his hands shook when he accepted his diploma. No one but me. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them that their perfect son wasn't perfect at all, that he was drowning in something none of us knew how to stop. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I clapped along with the crowd, pretending too. That summer, things got worse. Ethan was supposed to be preparing for college, but instead, he drifted further away. He quit his job at the grocery store after only 2 weeks, claiming his boss was a jerk. He spent long nights out with friends I had never met, stumbling home at sunrise with excuses that grew more ridiculous each time. And the money, always the money. It disappeared faster than ever. Mom's wallet, Dad's spare change jar. Even my allowance, tucked away in a showbox under my bed, vanished one afternoon. I confronted him about it, my voice shaking with both fear and anger. "You took it, didn't you?" I demanded, holding up the empty showbox. Ethan didn't even bother denying it. He just sighed, rubbing his temples like I was the one causing him stress. "I'll pay you back," he muttered. "It's not about the money," I snapped. "What are you even doing with it?" He glared at me, his eyes cold and sharp in a way that made me flinch. "You don't get to ask me questions. You're just a kid." "I'm not a kid," I whispered, though I felt smaller than ever. "You're my brother. I deserve to know." For a second, I thought I saw something. Guilt, maybe? Sadness? But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Ethan shook his head and stormed out of the room, leaving me staring at the empty showbox in my trembling hands. That was the moment I realized the distance between us wasn't just growing. It was turning into a canyon I couldn't cross. But the breaking point came a few weeks later. It was late one Saturday night when I was woken by shouting. At first, I thought it was just a dream, but then I heard Dad's voice booming from the kitchen. My stomach sank as I slipped out of bed and crept toward the noise. "Don't lie to me, Ethan," Dad roared. "I'm not lying," Ethan's voice cracked, filled with desperation. "Then explain this." I peeked around the corner and saw Dad holding up his wallet, waving it angrily. "You think I wouldn't notice $200 missing?" Mom stood in the corner, her hands pressed over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ethan's face was pale, his body trembling. I needed it, okay? I'll pay it back, I swear." "Needed it for what?" Dad shot back. "You don't have a job, you're barely looking for one, and now this?" My heart pounded as I waited for Ethan to confess, to finally admit the truth. But he didn't. He just shook his head, repeating, "I'll pay it back. I promise." "Promise?" Dad's voice was bitter. "Your promises mean nothing anymore." The tension was unbearable. I wanted to step in to defend Ethan, to take the blame even though it wasn't mine. But before I could move, Dad's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Are you using?" The room froze. Mom let out a choked sob. Ethan's eyes started to the floor. That silence, that hesitation, was louder than any confession. "Get out," Dad finally said, his voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. Ethan's head shot up. "What? You heard me. Get out of my house." "Robert," Mom cried, clutching his arm. "He's our son. Our son is stealing from us. Our son can't even look me in the eye without lying. If he won't tell us the truth, then he doesn't deserve this roof over his head." The words cut like knives. Ethan's face crumpled, but he didn't fight back. He just grabbed his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and stormed out the door. The slam of that door echoed through the house, leaving a silence that was somehow louder than the shouting had been. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart in my throat. I had just watched my brother, my hero, get kicked out of our home. And the worst part? I knew exactly what he was doing, but I still couldn't bring myself to say the words. For days, the house felt empty without him. Mom cried at the dinner table. Dad buried himself in work, avoiding the subject altogether. And me? I carried the heaviest guilt of all. Because while my parents were drowning in confusion and heartbreak, I knew the truth. I knew Ethan wasn't just lost. He was addicted. And I was the only one who could have stopped him before it got this far. But I hadn't. I had stayed silent, and now my silence had blown our family apart. Weeks passed with no word from Ethan. No calls. No visits. It was like he had vanished. I tried to focus on school, on friends, on anything to distract me from the gnawing hole in my chest. But nothing worked. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there he was, my brother, my hero, my ghost. He looked thinner than ever, his clothes hanging off his frame, his eyes hollow and desperate. "Can I come in?" he whispered. And in that moment, I had no idea whether letting him in would save him or destroy us all. When Ethan stood on our doorstep that night, part of me wanted to slam the door in his face. The other part, the bigger part, wanted to hug him so tightly he could never slip away again. My heart beat painfully fast as I took in his frail figure, his trembling hands, his hollow eyes. He looked like a shadow of the brother I once idolized, the hero who had carried me on his shoulders, cheered me on, made me believe I was worth something. Without waiting for my answer, Ethan stepped inside. Mom gasped when she saw him, rushing forward to wrap him in her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "My baby. My sweet boy." Dad didn't move at first. He just stood there with his arms crossed, jaw clenched, watching Ethan like he was a stranger invading our home. Ethan collapsed into a chair at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. "I messed up," he whispered. "I messed up so bad." Mom rubbed his back, sobbing softly. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll get through this." Dad finally spoke, his voice sharp. "Through what?" "He won't even admit what he's doing." Ethan's shoulders shook as he whispered, "I can't stop. I tried, but I can't. I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He didn't say the word addiction, but we all heard it. It was real now. No more excuses, no more lies. I felt tears sting my own eyes as I watched my brother unravel. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to demand why he had dragged us into this nightmare. But another part just wanted to hold his hand, to promise him that I'd never leave him no matter how far he fell. Dad's face hardened. "You need help, Ethan. Real help. Rehab. Counseling. Something. But you can't stay here if you're going to keep using." "I don't have any money for that," Ethan muttered. Mom gripped his hand. "We'll figure it out. We'll make it work. You're our son." But I could see it, the flicker in Ethan's eyes, the restless twitch in his fingers. He wanted to leave. He wanted the drugs more than he wanted us. That night, after Mom and Dad went to bed, Ethan and I sat in the living room together. The silence between us was thick, filled with all the words we weren't saying. Finally, I whispered, "Why, Ethan? Why did you start?" He stared at the floor, his voice barely audible. "Pressure. Expectations. Everyone thought I was perfect, but I wasn't. The first time I tried it, it felt like the weight disappeared. I could breathe. I could be someone else. But now." He trailed off, his hands shaking. "Now I'm stuck." I swallowed hard, my chest aching. "You don't have to do this alone." His eyes finally met mine, and for a split second, I saw the brother I remembered. The one who made me believe in myself. "You're the only one who still believes in me," he whispered. That moment broke me. Because I did still believe in him, even when I shouldn't. But belief alone wasn't enough to stop what happened next. Over the next few weeks, Ethan tried to get clean. Or at least, he pretended to. He stayed home more, ate dinner with us, even helped Dad in the yard. For a while, it almost felt normal again. Mom's smile returned, fragile but real. Dad even cracked a joke at dinner one night, making us all laugh. But I noticed the little things. Ethan's sudden disappearances in the middle of the night. The way he avoided looking at us when we asked how he was feeling. The lies creeping back in, smoother than ever. And then it happened. It was a Thursday afternoon. I came home from school to find Mom sitting on the kitchen floor, her face pale, her hands shaking as she clutched an empty pill bottle. "He took them," she whispered when she saw me. "All of them. My prescription painkillers. They were here this morning, and now they're gone." My stomach dropped. "Where's Ethan?" Her voice cracked. "He's gone too." We searched everywhere. His room, the garage, the park where he used to meet that car. He was nowhere. Hours passed. Darkness fell. Dad called the police, his voice heavy with defeat as he reported his own son missing. Mom couldn't stop crying, her hands trembling as she clutched the phone, praying for good news. And me? I felt like I was drowning. Because deep down, I knew exactly where Ethan was. I just didn't want to admit it. I grabbed my bike and rode through the streets, my heart pounding. I checked the park first, then the old basketball court, then the alley behind the convenience store. And finally, I found him, slumped against the back wall of an abandoned building, his body limp, his skin pale. "Ethan!" I shouted, dropping my bike and rushing to his side. His eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. "Hey, little bro," he slurred, his words thick and slow. Tears streamed down my face as I shook him. "What did you do?" I just, I just wanted the noise to stop," he whispered. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called 911. My voice cracked as I begged them to hurry, to save him, to not take my brother away from me forever. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but it felt like hours. They worked on him right there, their voices urgent but calm, their hands moving fast. I stood frozen, watching them try to pull him back from the edge. When they finally loaded him onto the stretcher, I grabbed his hand and held on tight. "Don't leave me," I whispered. "Please, Ethan. I still need you." His grip was weak, but it was there. That night at the hospital, as I sat in the waiting room with Mom and Dad, I realized something painful. My silence had almost killed him. If I had spoken up sooner, maybe it wouldn't have gotten this far. Maybe he wouldn't be lying unconscious in a hospital bed with machines keeping him alive. The guilt was suffocating. I had protected him because I loved him. But now I had to face the truth. Protecting him didn't mean staying silent. It meant forcing him to confront the thing that was destroying him, even if it broke our family in the process. And that was the moment I knew. The next time Ethan opened his eyes, I'd have to make the hardest choice of my life. Expose him, or lose him forever. The hospital waiting room became our prison. Hours stretched into days, the sterile walls closing in on us as we sat in silence, broken only by the steady beeping of machines behind closed doors. Mom never left her seat, her hands clutching a worn tissue that she shredded into pieces without realizing. Dad paced endlessly, his eyes bloodshot, his jaw clenched tight as if holding back years of unspoken fear. And me, I just sat there, staring at the floor, replaying every moment in my head. Every lie I'd ignored. Every time I chose silence over truth. Every chance I had to stop this before it spiraled out of control. Guilt burned inside me like acid, eating me alive. On the third night, Ethan finally woke up. The doctor led us into his room, his voice calm but serious. "He's stable for now, but he needs more than just medical care. He needs help, real help. Without it, he won't survive this cycle." When we entered, Ethan looked small beneath the hospital sheets. His once bright eyes were dull, his skin pale and fragile. He glanced at us, shame flickering across his face before he looked away. Mom rushed to his side, clutching his hand. "You scared me half to death," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice hoarse. Dad stood at the foot of the bed, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But I could see the pain in his eyes. "Sorry doesn't cut it anymore," he said quietly. "This ends now, Ethan. One way or another." The silence that followed was unbearable. I wanted to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Then Ethan turned his gaze to me, and in that moment, I saw it, the brother I once knew, buried beneath the addiction. "I didn't want you to see me like this," he whispered. My chest tightened. "I've seen everything, Ethan. I've been watching you fall apart for years. And I didn't say anything. That's on me too." His eyes widened slightly, surprise breaking through the fog. I took a deep breath, the decision I'd been avoiding finally crashing down on me. "I can't keep your secret anymore. Not when it's killing you. Not when it's tearing us apart." My voice trembled, but I forced myself to continue. "Mom, Dad, Ethan's been stealing money for drugs. For years. I knew. I saw him. I even followed him once. I should have told you, but I was scared. I thought protecting him meant staying quiet. But silence almost killed him. and I can't do it anymore." The room went still. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with fresh tears. Dad's face hardened, but his voice shook when he finally spoke. "I knew it. Deep down, I knew." Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, tears sliding down his temples. "I didn't want you to know," he whispered. "I didn't want you to hate me." Mom shook her head fiercely, her tears falling onto his blanket. "We could never hate you. We hate what this has done to you. But we will never hate you." For the first time in years, the truth was out in the open. It was raw, ugly, and painful, but it was real. And strangely, in that painful honesty, there was a sliver of hope. The days that followed were the hardest of our lives. Dad researched treatment centers, making phone call after phone call until his voice grew hoarse. Mom begged insurance companies, pleading for help we could barely afford. And Ethan? He agreed to go. For the first time, he didn't fight us. He didn't make excuses. He admitted he needed help. The night before he left for rehab, he sat with me in our room. We didn't turn on the lights, just sat in the dim glow from the street lamp outside. He handed me something, a small, crumpled photo of us from years ago, back when I was 8 and he was 11. We were both smiling, carefree, holding popsicles in the summer sun. "Keep it," he said quietly. "I want to remember who I was before all this. And I want you to remember too. Because I don't want you to just see me as a screw-up." My throat tightened. "You're not just a screw-up. You're still my brother. You'll always be my brother." He nodded, his eyes shining. "Then don't give up on me. Even if I fall again." I promised him I wouldn't. The next morning, we drove him to the rehab center. The goodbye was brutal, Mom sobbing uncontrollably, Dad gripping Ethan's shoulder with unspoken love, me hugging him so tightly I thought I might never let go. When he walked inside, my chest ached like a piece of me was missing. Weeks turned into months. Letters arrived, shaky at first, then steadier, filled with apologies and hopes and tiny victories. He wrote about how hard it was, how much he wanted to give up, but also about how he was starting to see himself again. And slowly, so slowly, our family began to heal. But the scars remain. Even now, years later, I still think about the silence I kept, the weight I carried, the moment I almost lost my brother forever. And I know one thing for certain. Secrets don't protect the people we love. They destroy them. My brother was my hero once. Then he became my biggest heartbreak. But through it all, he taught me something I'll never forget. Sometimes loving someone means telling the truth, even if it shatters everything. Because only when the truth is out can you start to rebuild. And as long as Ethan keeps fighting, I'll keep standing by his side. Not because he's perfect. Not because he's the hero I once imagined. But because he's my brother. And no matter how broken he gets, I'll always believe he can be whole again.